Good morning. My name is Mike Carney, and we're here in beautiful downtown St. Louis at the Adams Mark Hotel. It's the 12th of June, and it's my pleasure to talk this morning to Frank H. Faust, who is a legend in ASHRAE and has been a member of ASHRAE and its preceding society since 1930. Isn't that right, Frank?
That's correct.
1930 to 1990. He was president of the ASHRAE Society in 1963 to 64, and at that time was involved very much with the coming together of the American Society of Heating and Ventilating Engineers, ASHVE,
Which at that time was known as ASHRAE.
ASHAE, okay. And then also the American Society of Refrigerating Engineers. So we'll talk about that a little bit, though. But Frank, I think we agreed we're going to chat first about how you started out, your educational background, and how you got involved in this thing called refrigeration and air conditioning.
Well, I was graduated from Yale University in 1926 with a degree in mechanical engineering. And I went to work for the General Electric Company on what was known as the test program, which is a program of test of rotational assignments to different tests, testing of equipment, with the idea that the person so assigned would make a selection of what kind of work he would do after that. And I became head of test of the refrigeration department, which was then under formation.
Was this in Syracuse, New York?
This was in Schenectady, New York.
Schenectady, New York.
And as my assignments were to development test domestic refrigerators during the period when the first refrigerators were about to be introduced. I went to work in 1926, and the first domestic refrigerator was sold on May 1st, 1927.
I see. Very much involved in the forefront of refrigeration coming into the American home.
Yes. And I was assigned to work under Alex R. Stevenson, Jr., Assistant to Vice President for Engineering of the General Electric Company. And he incidentally was later president of ASHRAE, and because of that, he wanted me to get interested in societies.
Bosses have a way of encouraging that, don't they?
And there were two societies, of course, ASHRAE and ASHVE at the time. He was active in ASHRAE, but by then, by 1929, the General Electric Company already made the decision that it was going to go into air conditioning. And so I joined ASHVE and he belonged to ASHRAE. However, I then joined ASHRAE in 1931. So I was a member of both societies.
So ASHRAE you joined in 1931, ASHVE you joined in 1930. 1930. That's really something. Okay. What was the nature of work that those societies were doing at that time, and the type of equipment that was involved?
Well, the ASHVE was formed in 1895, and as the name implies, the interests are mainly in the heating and ventilating field. ASHRAE was formed in 1905, and its interests were primarily refrigeration, which at that time meant cold storage and ice making, primarily because the commercial and domestic refrigeration industry didn't get really started until 1918 or thereabouts.
But your involvement at that stage was with GE and primarily in residential refrigeration systems, is that?
The first assignment was residential refrigeration systems, and I was mainly in the development engineering part of the activity. But by 1929, 3 years later, the company decided to go into air conditioning, and the General Electric was the first company to develop the hermetic sealed compressor, and the concept of having the entire refrigeration cycle integrated with the box. And the conception was made that you could have an air conditioner of the same type.
I see.
And so I was, by that time, General Electric made two sizes of refrigerators, one for domestic use in Schenectady and one at Fort Wayne, Indiana for commercial use. And because the larger compressor would be necessary for air conditioning, I was asked to go to Fort Wayne. And with an assignment to develop a self-contained room air conditioner.
And did that involve making a new compressor or larger size?
It involved utilizing the commercial refrigeration compressor and a cycle for a room air conditioner. And such a unit was developed, and there were two made in 1930, one of which I had in my apartment.
One of the perks, huh?
And one was used in the development test. The subsequent year, 30 of them were made, and these were put out in different locations. I remember one in Florida, which I visited, one in Chicago at an apartment house, a home, one in the home of Alex Stevenson in Schenectady.
That was your boss at that time.
And two of them were put in the board of directors room of the Electric Bonded Share Company, which at that time was owned by General Electric Company. And one of the president, and now was the president of General Electric Company.
Okay. So you started out with two. You got one of the first two. You wouldn't still have that around, would you, Frank?
No. But an interesting fact is that over 100 million room air conditioners have been built since the first one appeared.
Is that right?
And to my knowledge, that's the first self-contained room air conditioner ever made.
The ones that you built in Fort Wayne, Indiana?
Yes.
Is that right? Now, well, when you say the first, were there other companies developing room air conditioners at that time that you knew you were in competition with, or is this pretty much?
Well, Frigidaire had designed a room air conditioner, which had a remote system. They used the commercial refrigerator condensing unit, which is in the basement, piped to a standard icebox.
I see.
Or not icebox, but a
Air handler.
But similar to how it would have been done with the domestic refrigerator.
Okay.
So we had the concept of air conditioning in a residence or a small room. But our concept was different in that we wanted the thing to be self-contained. Their system was very bulky. I think it weighed 800 pounds or something like that. One I designed was pretty heavy too by today's standards, but it wasn't that heavy.
Okay, so if we were to say those were the first self-contained room air conditioners.
Yes.
as opposed to what we would call split system.
Yes.
That was currently
Yes.
was being made then.
And incidentally, there was a symposium on this subject at Portland, in the Portland meeting, which you can reference.
Okay. Portland or Vancouver?
Portland.
Portland.
The symposium was on the early history of refrigeration and air conditioning, and the first development of unitary air conditioners.
Well, that kind of grew up to be a pretty big thing with General Electric, didn't it? The self-contained
Yes, it did.
systems.
Yes, and still is. Particularly in the domestic refrigerator business.
I sort of separate domestic refrigerator from air conditioning
Yes.
both ways. They built a lot of unitary equipment.
Yes.
Well, talk to me a little bit about, well, first of all, you got some notes of points that you wanted to make in this thing, so I'll follow that. What are some of the points that you want to get across here in your talk?
Well, I'm interested in the early development of the societies, and both societies started out with the idea that their scope would include publications, research, and standards, and they differed only in the industries they served. There were 2 or 3 significant events that come to mind. One was in the field of research, although the society in 1894 said they were interested in research. They really didn't get started in research until the 1900s. And the first knowledge of research that I have is that a contract was made by the U.S. Bureau with the U.S. Bureau of Mines, and a laboratory owned by the U.S. Bureau of Mines in Pittsburgh was granted to the society for use, in return for which the society did some research on mine air conditioning.
Now, was that initiated by ASHBE?
Yes, ASHBE.
Ventilating Society.
And about the same time, the ASHRAE had an interest in the properties of refrigerants, and they contracted with the U.S. Bureau of Standards to develop the properties of ammonia and other refrigerants. When the need for research exceeded the capability of the facilities at Pittsburgh, ASHRAE bought a building in Cleveland, Ohio, which was the society laboratory for many years. And ASHRAE followed a different trend. It contracted research to universities, which ASHRAE also did for a period of time, until in 1963 or 64, the decision was made to do all research through outside laboratories and not to do it in-house. And I was a part of that decision too. The reason for it was that the facilities in Cleveland were somewhat limited to physiological research and air friction and ducts and similar things, and to get the diversity that we needed to go to different kinds of laboratories. So even at that time, even before the laboratory was sold, research was being contracted with outside laboratories, principally in universities.
Because the one lab in Cleveland was specific to certain types of testing.
Yeah.
I can see that. You need more of a variety of types of laboratories to do the kind of testing.
And to get the competence that we needed in a research director, we didn't have enough money to hire the right kind of a person.
Okay.
So there was a study made by the Research and Technical Committee on which I served, and the decision was made to close the laboratory and to still have a director of research, but he would have different functions. He would
Allocate
allocate a contract to the work.
What was the budget for the research at that stage? Frank, do you remember?
Well, I don't know what it was in 1920, but in 1963 or 64, it was at a level of $250,000 per year.
And now it's just about $1.2 million. I thought I heard David Butler.
Something like that.
That's a remarkable heritage in research in the ASHRAE.
Now, backing up to your other point of what happened that was significant, I want to cover the matter of standards. And in the early 1900s, there were some accidents that occurred in large refrigerating systems, and there were a decision was made to set up a committee, the Standards for Refrigeration Safety, and it was decided to do that under the aegis of the American Standards Association. And the committee was designated the ASA B9 Committee on Refrigeration. And that was an outgrowth of a similar committee called the Unfired Pressure Vessel Code, because a refrigerating system is a form of unfired pressure vessel. And I was active on revisions of the code during the period with the society.
You were active on this ASA B9 committee?
Yes.
That formed?
I was on it for several years. In fact, was vice chairman of the code drafting committee for one edition of the code, and did a lot of the editing of the code.
The significance of that code and standard was that you began to create standards for the refrigeration industry.
It was really the first standardizing effort that I know of in either society. And out of that grew the present standards program, which is, of course, much broader and much greater in scope.
It certainly is. Do you remember some of the other players on that committee, the folks that you worked with that you respected and work on that standard?
Yes. Well, I can recall their names exactly, but the chairman was the research director for Kelvinator, I think, and there was a man who had headquarters in Cleveland, who was a consulting engineer who was quite active in that code.
Well, it sounds like it was much like it is today. There are people from different firms and different parts of the industry that came together to work on a volunteer basis now.
Yes, it was all volunteer except well, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's another set of codes, the performance codes, grading and testing of equipment codes that were developed in the 30s and 40s, which which I was active in. And
now, would that be similar to what I know as ARI testing of air conditioning capacities? Is that the type of thing you were doing then?
yes, but there are two aspects to that. One is the test method, and one is the establishment of a level of performance. And initially they were considered as one, but later on ASHRAE and its predecessors elected to consider only standards of testing, and to leave to the trade associations the question of minimum performance. So we've always worked closely with AHAM and the ARI so that we develop the testing methods and the testing procedures and the whole matter of how you determine performance. But the certification of performance is left to the trade association on the theory that that's a commercial matter and not an engineering matter.
Has that worked out pretty well in your mind?
Yes, it worked out very well.
That's interesting. I didn't know there was an agreed upon handshake there.
ARI, for instance, developed the Unitary Air Conditioner Certification Program, which incidentally I was also involved in as chairman of the committee.
Okay, with ARI?
With ARI.
Association with ARI. You are associated with ARI?
I was, yes. I was the general electric representative to ARI on unitary air conditioners and some other subjects.
Do I judge correctly in that your career was primarily with General Electric?
Yes, for 44.5 years.
44.5 years, that's just about all the way, isn't it?
Well, no, I worked 15 years after that, outside of General Electric.
We'll maybe get into that
A bit later.
What's your next point on your list? And we'll go from there. We talked about the ASA B9 committee creating what you feel was perhaps the first standard that related to the similarity between refrigeration systems and unfired pressure vessels.
Well, of course, the early refrigerants were primarily ammonia. There was some use of methyl chloride and other refrigerants, but there was a need for safer refrigerants, and DuPont, in conjunction with Frigidaire, developed the Freon refrigerants in the early 30s. And that revolutionized air conditioning systems because it permitted direct expansion of refrigerants instead of indirect systems with water as a transfer medium.
I imagine that was an exciting breakthrough.
And that also was taken into consideration in the ASA B9 code.
Okay. We'll go ahead with your points. Then we got from ASA B9, we got into the rating and testing codes that you just discussed, and the handshake between ASHRAE making the test method and ARI talking about the level of performance. And then this has evolved into quite a practice of establishing standards on the part of ASHRAE. And it'd be interesting to just take a panorama of that bookstore down there and get a feeling for the number of standards that ASHRAE has published and continues to work on, all volunteer efforts.
Well, as far as I personally was concerned, I had a broader assignment than is possible today.
Is that right?
For the reason that the industry was new and there were no experts. All you had to do was declare yourself an expert.
Yeah, self-declared expert.
For instance, on room air, I was designer of room air conditioners, but then the next assignment I had was to develop railroad air conditioning.
Well, that certainly dovetails real nicely. The marketing man must be proud of you over at GE, right?
Yeah. And we had a transportation department in Erie, Pennsylvania that designed locomotives and railroad equipment. And I was assigned to work with them. And my assignment was to develop the air conditioning system, and theirs was to develop the motive power. At the time, the first air conditioners were steam systems, steam ejector systems. We were trying to develop an electric system, and the transportation department developed a motor generator which would generate electricity from the there's an axle generator attached to the axle of the cars, and would when they were up to speed would feed a motor driving the compressor. But in the stations it was battery operated. It charged batteries, and the batteries provided the current for the motors.
Were you using DC motors then?
Using well, they sold, let me see, they were an AC/DC. They had both AC and DC. They used the DC. They used the more, what do I want to say? They converted direct current to alternating current.
They had an inverter.
They had an inverter.
And they converted to AC.
Yes.
Okay. So the motors themselves were
because the compressors were made in Fort Wayne and were hermetically sealed motors. And my part of it was to develop the system and
apply it to a railroad car.
In other words, apply the equipment to a railroad car.
Bet you learned a lot about vibration in those years, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
We have a friend in our family, a guy named Arnie Mulbach, who works for GE and is involved with the reconditioning of large DC motors for railroad cars here in St. Louis. We've got quite a facility here for, what do they call them, traction motors or Traxon motors or something?
Something like that.
Big DC motors. So you learned about vibration from the railroad, huh?
Yes.
I bet that stuck with you in all your design experience.
I learned something about vibration in another way, because when we got into air conditioning of big buildings, we had a air conditioning system in a theater or an office building, and the tenant there, the stationary engineer, I guess you'd call him, or maintenance man, had a chair that he leaned up against the wall, and the wall would shake, and he would complain. And one of my assignments was to find out what's causing the vibration and stop it.
Stop the wall from shaking. Well, we don't want to keep him awake too long in his job.
Well, another interesting thing was I said I had broad assignments. I was assigned to work on heat pumps, and it seemed incredible at this point that we'd start to make heat pumps when we hardly got into the business, but they were under development as early as 1930 and 31. And
this means using a packaged air conditioner as a source of heat as opposed to just the cooling.
yes,
Or do you mean a reversible package that could do either?
both. In fact, I was co-author of a paper on the application of heat pumps to the cooling and heating of houses, which was presented to a joint session of ASHRAE and ASRE in Cleveland, the Cleveland meeting in 1931.
1931?
Or 1932 it may have been.
Okay. Jeepers.
And incidentally, the first time that the two societies had a joint meeting.
How long did it take before you had a working heat pump that could address those issues?
We installed the first heat pump system in Ohio in a utility building owned by an American Electric Power Company. And that was about 1933 or 4.
Jeepers. It's interesting because we think that's very much avant-garde design, where heat pumps came into vogue and used in residential applications here largely in the past 10 years in our thinking now, isn't it?
I also participated in the design of an air conditioning system for a theater, and was first applied in a House of Magic exhibit that was done like to get the World's Fair in Chicago in 1934 or 35.
Sounds like you had a busy 1930s.
Yes.
Busy.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Where do we go from here? What do you have on your list now to continue with?
Well, I became a director of ASHRAE and also ASHRAE, and I guess this brings us up to the time when the societies were thinking of merger, or some people were thinking of merger. There are 1,000 or more people that belong to both societies, and it was difficult to attend 4 meetings a year, national meetings a year, and also there was a lot of common subjects. Proponents of the subjects presented at both society meetings was on air conditioning. By that time, ASHV had gone out of the heating and ventilating into the air conditioning aspects, and ASRE, which had previously been interested in refrigeration, began to get into air conditioning. So a committee was formed, the Committee on Cooperation, and
were you on that committee?
yes, I was chairman of it. As I recall, there were 5 members of ASRE and 5 members of ASHVE, and I was elected the chairman of the group, first chairman. It continued for several years, and I was subsequent chairman. It started out as an attempt to cooperate, but it grew into a decision to merge. And I'm writing a paper on that subject, which I can discuss now or leave for later discussion in my paper.
I think we can give us some highlights of it. The points you want to make. Was it a universally accepted merger, or
no, it wasn't universally accepted. In fact, one man in ASHV, McDonald of McDonald and Miller Company, who had been very active in ASHV affairs and was in the business of making heating system accessories, was very much opposed to merger. And John James, who worked for him as a director of engineering, was on the committee. And any time the subject of merger came up, he reminded us that we were only supposed to talk about cooperation.
So he kept you hewing to the road of cooperation between two separate societies, even though the distinction between, where there was a lot of crossover in the interest of the society.
We made a survey and found that 60% of the subject matter of the two societies was air conditioning.
True.
And there were about 7,000 members of ASHRAE and 11,000 of ASHRAE, which by that time had already changed to ASHRAE. The ASHRAE wanted to expand ventilating and air conditioning, so they called it the American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning Engineers. And I was succeeded as chairman by, I think, Art Hess. Oh, I have to verify that because there may have been more than one. And Art Hess became a president, was a president of predecessor societies and also of ASHRAE. Once the decision was made to merge, then they set up detailed plans for new constitution bylaws, set up a budget,
and the mechanics of bringing the two societies together were, I'm sure, ripe with political intrigue. But weren't the societies rather similar in their makeup? There wasn't a great social change as far as the pattern of
no, although there was a little of that too. There was objections from the cold storage and ice making industry, meat packing industry. ASHRAE did a lot of work in food technology, and in addition to its work in ammonia refrigeration systems, and those groups saw no merit in a merger. There were groups in Boston and Chicago that, particularly in the ammonia refrigeration business, that did not want the merger. And then ASHRAE, there was the domestic refrigerator people that didn't see any merit in it. And so it had to be sold. It was not just an automatic thing.
Well, I mean, a quiet, steady hand at the tiller. I guess that was part of your role.
I was asked to go around and visit some of the chapters and give talks on the merit of merger.
It's interesting now, I mean, looking back on it, I can see that merger was after the creation of the Freons, and that opened up refrigeration to a whole new market.
It came about because of the change in character of the two societies, because in the case of ASHRAE, the movement of air, the control of humidity, dehumidifying systems opened it up so it became an air conditioning system. In the case of ASHRAE, it was the development of the room air conditioner and the unitary air conditioner using the refrigeration cycle that was similar to the domestic refrigeration cycle that opened it up, and that's how they came together.
Isn't it interesting now that with the pressure on the CFC issue and the phasing out of the chlorinated refrigerants, that we just talked about looking more at ammonia.
Yes.
That there may well be a incentive to bring those two delegations of our society even closer together now in the future, because I think we're going to see some more ammonia used as a refrigerant.
Well, we never ruled out ammonia. You can see the problem. We still talk about ASHRAE.
Yes.
There's a minority group who think we don't give enough attention to the refrigeration aspects.
Well, I certainly like their cocktail party, don't you?
Yes, that's a good thing.
I think we are a society of many Technologies.
Yes.
And it's an umbrella organization, and it serves its umbrella role very
Well, the
well.
merger did make it possible to expand the scope of the society, and it's enabled us to get into air cleaning and air conditioning in a big way, and control the environment. And then, of course, solar systems, solar energy systems, and
Economic issues,
Economic
building
issues.
management.
the construction of the building itself, control the environment.
There's just a number of technologies we're involved in. Now, you were involved in both societies. You were first